The real heiress crashes. The Billionaire's Gala. Welcome back to Narratives and Memories. If you believe in reclaiming your power, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We are about to witness the most spectacular act of revenge ever stitched into a dress. The ballroom of the St. Regis Hotel was ablaze with light from baccarat crystals, reflecting the glow of hundreds of candles. That evening in Manhattan, the annual charity gala was a spectacle of the American elite displaying their fortunes and their secrets. Amidst the flow of vintage champagne and calculated laughter, Marcus Thorne circulated the room, his hand possessively placed on the waist of a striking blonde. "Meet my wife," he announced, smiling widely at investors, socialites, and reporters. The woman, Alexis Cross, beamed, adorned in borrowed jewels and a surname that had never been hers. But just beyond the massive oak doors, someone was waiting. Elara Beaumont adjusted the gown she had stitched with her own hands during 6 months of strategic silence. Every stitch was a memory, every detail a declaration. It wasn't merely fabric, it was a manifesto. The doors swung open, and the click of her heels on the marble floor echoed like a sentence being passed. 300 pairs of eyes turned instantly. Silence sliced through the ballroom like a blade. Marcus froze, his champagne glass trembling in his hand. The blonde beside him visibly paled, because there, gliding across the velvet carpet like a Greek goddess reborn from the ashes, was the true Mrs. Thorne. And she hadn't come to ask questions. She had come to collect. Elara Beaumont first met Marcus Thorne on a rainy autumn evening in Brooklyn, when she still believed that love was built with small gestures and honest words. She was 23, a budding designer working 16 hours a day in a tiny studio on Court Street, in the heart of Carroll Gardens. The space was the size of a generous closet, barely fitting a cutting table, 3 battered mannequins, and rolls of fabric bought with the last of the savings her grandmother, Maeve, had left her. Marcus was 10 years her senior, the owner of a luxury hotel chain across the globe, and possessed a manufactured charm that Elara, at the time, mistook for natural sophistication. He stumbled into the studio one gloomy November afternoon, looking for a unique gift for his mother's 70th birthday. The bell above the door jingled, and Elara looked up from the hem she was stitching to see a tall man in an impeccable Tom Ford suit, rain still glistening on his wool coat. "Apologies for the intrusion," he said, his voice deep and cultured. "I'm looking for something special, something that isn't common." Elara stood, wiping her hands on her paint-stained apron. "Everything here is special," she replied with a shy smile. "And nothing is common." He chuckled, a genuine laugh that lit up his gray eyes. For the next hour, they talked about tailoring, the lost art of manual design, the authentic New York she loved, and the polished version he merely inhabited. Marcus chose a silk shawl Elara had hand-embroidered, with patterns inspired by the Brooklyn Bridge. "It's perfect," he said. And then, almost as an afterthought, "Will you have dinner with me tomorrow?" 3 weeks later, they were dining in intimate restaurants where Marcus knew the chefs by name. He spoke of business expansion, the complexity of managing properties in 5 countries, and the loneliness that came with success. Elara shared her dreams of one day dressing powerful women and how every garment tells a story, a belief instilled by her grandmother that beauty without purpose is just empty decoration. Marcus listened, or seemed to, with an attention Elara had never experienced. She felt seen, valued, special. 2 months later, on a rented sailboat near the Statue of Liberty, with the Manhattan skyline illuminated behind them, he knelt and opened a velvet box containing a Cartier diamond ring. "Marry me," he said without flourish, like closing an important but inevitable deal. Elara said yes, believing, desperately and naively, that this was the start of a shared life, not the prologue to a monumental betrayal. The first years were good, or at least they appeared so, through the rose-tinted lenses Alara insisted on wearing. With Marcus's initial investment, she expanded her studio into a larger space, quickly earning a reputation for authenticity among clients who sought style over status. Meanwhile, Marcus's hotel empire expanded, accompanied by constant travel. Berlin, Prague, Lisbon, Vienna, Amsterdam. Always a crucial meeting or delicate negotiation. Alara accepted the absences as the price of loving an ambitious man. She trusted him. When he sent goodnight texts from distant hotel rooms, she replied with photos of her work in progress, the life they were building together. She trusted the expensive gifts. She trusted foolishly that confidence was the unshakable foundation of marriage. But there were small, easy-to-ignore signs. Trips that extended without warning. Calls he took in another room, his voice low and tense. The time she called the hotel where he was supposedly staying, only to find no reservation in his name. Must be a system error, Marcus would say, annoyed. Alara swallowed her doubt like a bitter pill, hoping it would pass quickly. Until the afternoon, everything changed. It was a typical New York Thursday. Alara was at the studio, adjusting the hem of a cocktail dress, when the bell jingled. A platinum blonde woman stood in the doorway, tall, with the kind of manufactured beauty that screamed money spent on Swiss clinics and exclusive gyms. She wore a Max Mara coat and carried a Hermes bag that cost more than 6 months of the studio's rent. "Hello," the woman said, entering uninvited. "I hear you do custom dresses." Alara, always professional, smiled. "Yes, it's my specialty. How can I help you?" The woman sat, crossing her legs, and idly flipped through a fashion magazine. "I need a wedding dress." "Wonderful. When is the wedding, and what style are you imagining?" The woman let out a high, uncomfortable laugh. "Actually, I'm already married. But my husband, he likes me to dress as a bride sometimes, to keep things interesting. We're a different kind of couple, you know." Alara forced a polite smile and began taking measurements, trying not to judge. As she worked, the woman talked about her honeymoon in Santorini, her newly decorated apartment in the Upper East Side, and how her husband was generous, always surprising her with expensive gifts. "He has impeccable taste," the blonde continued, admiring her nails. "He gave me this necklace the other day." She touched a gold and diamond piece at her throat. "It's vintage, from a jeweler in the Diamond District." Alara froze. She knew that necklace. She had seen it before, in Marcus's safe. He had told her it belonged to his grandmother, and would be hers one day. Her heart began to race, but she kept her voice level. "It is beautiful. Your husband does have excellent taste." The woman continued chattering, oblivious to the storm gathering inside Alara. Then, distractedly, she let it slip. "Marcus is so generous. He really knows how to treat a woman." Alara's world slowed down. "Marcus," she repeated, her voice sounding alien. The woman looked up, and a flash of panic crossed her face. "Marcus Thorne," she confirmed, her voice now hesitant. "But you don't know him, do you?" The words left Alara's mouth before she could stop them. "I am Alara Thorne, his wife." The silence that followed was absolute. The blonde visibly paled. I didn't know. He said he was divorced." She stood up abruptly, knocking the magazine to the floor. "I have to go." She rushed out, leaving behind only a trail of expensive perfume and an emotional bomb that would explode slowly, devastatingly, in Alara's chest. Alara sank to the floor, surrounded by scissors and threads, but she didn't cry. Not yet. First, she needed to understand. She called the Thorne Hotel in Vienna, where Marcus was supposedly staying. "I'm sorry, madam, but we have no one registered under that name. Ah, wait. Monsieur Thorne. He is not staying here, madam, but I can take a message? Elara hung up, the nausea rising. Where was Marcus? If not in Vienna, where had he spent the last 3 nights? The answer was obvious, sickening. He was with her, with the blonde, Alexis, the woman wearing Elara's necklace, sleeping in the apartment Marcus had bought with their money, their future. That night, Marcus returned home, tired, loosening his tie, complaining about exhausting meetings. Who is she? Elara asked from the dimly lit living room, her voice frighteningly calm. Marcus froze. Who is who? His voice was too controlled, too practiced. The blonde, Alexis, the one you take to Santorini, the one you make wear wedding dresses, the one wearing my grandmother's necklace. Marcus briefly closed his eyes, a non-verbal confession. When he opened them, there was resignation, not denial. Elara, it's complicated. In the business world, image is everything. Investors, they want to see a certain kind of woman by my side, someone who fits in. And I don't fit in, Elara finished, her voice cold. I'm too simple, too focused on my work. My hands have calluses from needles, so they're unsuitable for corporate cocktail parties. He didn't answer. The silence was more eloquent than any word. Elara stood up, feeling something inside her shatter irrevocably. Not her heart, but something deeper. Her trust, her faith, the naive version of herself that believed love was enough. Sleep in the guest room, she said icily. We'll decide what to do tomorrow. But Elara already knew what she would do. She just hadn't acquired the tools to execute it yet. In the weeks that followed, Elara Moreau made an unexpected choice. She stayed, not out of weakness, but out of pure, calculated strategy. She learned during those days of acute pain that rushed revenge is wasted revenge. She watched. She noted. She investigated. She hired a discreet private investigator, Mike Chen, who quickly delivered a complete dossier. The apartment bought through a shell company in the Caymans, bank accounts showing monthly transfers to Alexis, receipts for jewels, boutiques, and spas. Marcus was funding an entire parallel life, but the worst discovery was the news articles. The Thorne couple opens new hotel in Berlin. Marcus and Alexis Thorne celebrate Amsterdam expansion. The elegant Mrs. Thorne at the charity gala. Alexis, wearing Elara's surname, had been introduced to politicians, investors, and magnates, smiling and pretending to be the wife of a man who had a real wife at home, sewing dresses and waiting for scraps of attention. Elara knew she couldn't confront him publicly yet. She wouldn't make a scene he could control. She would use the only weapon she commanded with absolute perfection. She returned to the studio and locked the door. For the next 6 months, she worked on a dress. Not just any dress. A masterpiece of emotional engineering. A wearable piece of art that would communicate everything words could not. She sold some of the jewelry Marcus had given her, transforming his gifts into the material for her liberation. She found the finest silk suppliers in France, imported lace from Belgium, and worked tirelessly. She had secretly embroidered small, invisible details into the inner hem of the dress. June 3rd, 2018, their wedding day. March 12th, 2024, the day she discovered the betrayal. October 15th, 2025, the day she would set herself free. They were secret talismans, reminders that she had survived. When the dress was finally complete in mid-September, Elara received the gilded invitation. Charity Gala at the St. Regis Hotel. Date, October 15th. The final line on the back. Presence confirmed. Mr. Marcus Thorne and Mrs. Alexis Thorne. Mrs. Alexis Thorne. The name that was hers, now used by another woman, unofficial. Elegant stationery. The final blow. But ghosts, Ilara learned in those dark months, can haunt. And she planned to do exactly that. She hired attorney Eleanor Vance, known for dismantling powerful men in high-profile divorces, and compiled all the necessary documentation. Legally, she was entitled to half of everything Marcus had built during their marriage. But Ilara didn't want money. She wanted something far more valuable. Dignity. The morning of October 15th dawned with an impossibly blue sky over Manhattan. Ilara woke at 5, every cell alert. Today was about execution. Her assistant, Margot, arrived with a military-like determination. They didn't speak much. Margot knew the whole story. She was a confidant and a sister-in-arms. At 6, Margot brought the dress. Ilara slowly removed the protective cover. The silk glowed in the late afternoon light. It was perfect. A physical manifestation of 6 months of pain transformed into art. Humiliation transmuted into power. It was fluid yet structured, feminine yet fierce, elegant yet impossible to ignore. Ilara wore only the pearl earrings that had belonged to her grandmother, Maeve, the only jewels with immutable, emotional value. She had chosen strength, not ornamentation. At 7:00 p.m., she was in a discreet Uber, not Marcus's driver. She didn't want anything from him, not even transport. The car stopped in front of the St. Regis. The doorman, Christophe, recognized her. "Madame Thorne," he said, bowing with genuine respect. Ilara smiled. "Thank you for remembering, Christophe." She walked toward the open double doors, drawing a deep breath, feeling the embroidered dates on the hem graze her leg. A reminder of why she was here. And then she walked in. The click of her heels on the marble floor was deafening. 300 heads turned. Conversations died in the air. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. Ilara walked with the confidence of a queen entering her own kingdom. She saw him instantly. Marcus Thorne, in his perfectly cut tuxedo, his hand firmly on the waist of Alexis, who was wearing a sequined dress and Ilara's jewels. Their eyes met. Marcus froze. His smile died. His champagne glass trembled visibly, and Ilara, for the first time in months, felt power. Not power over him, but power over herself. The power to choose how her story would be told. Alexis followed Marcuse's gaze and instantly paled. She knew. Ilara stopped a meter away. She looked at Alexis. "You are wearing my jewelry," Ilara said calmly, her voice audible to the surrounding circle. It was a statement of fact. Alexis opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Then, Ilara turned to Marcus. "Introduce me," she commanded. Marcus swallowed hard. "Ilara, it's not the time." "Introduce me," she repeated, louder now, her voice cutting the silence like a sharpened blade. The entire room was listening. Reporters were approaching. He tried to smile, the practiced corporate smile of a man used to controlling the narrative. But the smile came out twisted, transparent. "Ilara Beaumont," he said, his voice strained. "My wife." The word was a confession ripped out under duress. A murmur swept through the ballroom. "Wife?" I thought. "Then who is she?" Alexis took a step back, her proximity to Ilara seemingly burning her perfect skin, and Ilara smiled. Not a happy smile, but the smile of someone who had waited 6 months for this moment. "Wife," she repeated, savoring the word. "Legal, because I was beginning to think you had forgotten." She looked at a journalist she had alerted, Juliet Chen, across the room. Juliet gave a slight nod. This was the headline. Marcus tried to grab Ilara's arm, but she pulled away as if burned. "Don't touch me," she said, her voice sharp as broken glass. "You lost that right when you decided I wasn't enough, when you needed a more polished, more convenient version of me." She looked at Alexis, now openly weeping. "Well, I hope she was worth it, darling," Ilara said, not with anger, but with something close to pity. "Because I'm not coming back." Then Ilara turned to the 300 guests, to the cameras, to the elite who had always treated her as invisible. "My name is Ilara Moreau," she announced. "I am a designer, a creator, and as of tomorrow morning, my attorney will file for divorce. And unlike my husband, I don't need to lie about who I am to be respected. I am who I always was. Authentic, honest, and infinitely more valuable than any of you realized." She walked toward the exit. The crowd parted for her. People who had ignored her before now watched her with something akin to reverence. As she passed Christophe, the doorman, he bowed deeply. "Madame," he said, and there was pride in his voice. Ilara stepped out onto Fifth Avenue. The doors closed behind her, muffling the chaos inside. She breathed deeply, filling her lungs with the cold night air. And then she laughed. A genuine, liberating laugh. She had done it. Final conclusion. The unstoppable renaissance. The next day was a media frenzy. Ilara's story went global. She was hailed as a feminist icon, a strategist who turned humiliation into art. She took control of the narrative, giving an exclusive cover story to Elle magazine entitled, "The Real Mrs. Thorne: How One Woman Stitched Her Way to Freedom." The article, which presented Ilara as a brilliant strategist, was a devastating expose on Marcus's deceit. Ilara's studio was immediately flooded with orders from women across the world who wanted a dress signed by Ilara Moreau, not just for the technique, but for what she now represented, a refusal to be erased. She eventually sold her stake in Marcus's company, taking a substantial but fair settlement. She didn't want his money, just her freedom. Marcus Thorne's life collapsed spectacularly. Investors questioned his integrity. Stock prices plummeted. Alexis, seeing the ship sink, publicly ended the relationship in a magazine interview, painting herself as another victim of Marcus's manipulation. The most important part of Ilara's journey was her Renaissance collection, which she was invited to showcase at New York Fashion Week 6 months later. The show was a powerful narrative of her healing, designs that moved from heavy, dark fabrics to light, structured, vibrant forms. The final gown was an updated, even more powerful version of the dress she wore to the gala. When it appeared, the audience, including many women who saw their own struggles in her journey, rose to their feet in a standing ovation that lasted 5 minutes. Ilara didn't defeat Marcus. He became irrelevant to her story. She had defeated her own fear. 3 years later, Ilara Moreau's brand was international, with boutiques in Milan and plans for Tokyo. She partnered with an organization to teach sewing and entrepreneurship to women escaping domestic abuse. Her story was no longer about betrayal. It was about building a life so authentic it couldn't be broken. She occasionally received emails from Marcus. "I was wrong. I think about what I lost every night. Can you forgive me?" Ilara would look at the message for a long moment. She didn't feel anger or sadness, just a profound sense of indifference. He no longer mattered. She simply deleted the email and blocked the sender. The most important love story Ilara ever wrote was the one she created with herself. She finally understood that chosen solitude is infinitely better than toxic company. She was whole, complete, and free. This powerful story is a testament to resilience. If Ilara's journey inspired you, please share the video and comment below, letting us know what the Renaissance dress symbolized for you. Chapter 4. The Architect and the Authentic. Before we dive into Ilara's next chapter, let us know, do you think Ilara should focus purely on building her empire, or should she allow a new love into her life? Comment. Your advice below. 2 years after the spectacular Renaissance show, Ilara Moreau was no longer just a designer. She was a movement. Her business, now operating out of a sprawling, beautifully converted warehouse in Soho, was a testament to ethical luxury. Her team had grown to 40 dedicated people, and her collections were lauded for their fierce femininity and moral integrity. Ilara's personal life, however, remained a carefully guarded sanctuary. Dates were rare, and serious commitment was non-existent. The lesson she learned from Marcus wasn't that men were untrustworthy, but that her self-worth could never again be tied to external validation. A standard few could meet. One crisp spring morning, Ilara's assistant Margot burst into her private design room with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "Ilara, you won't believe the offer that just came through. It's colossal. It's the Metropolitan Tower project." The Metropolitan Tower was the most ambitious new skyscraper project in Manhattan, a mixed-use behemoth redefining the city's skyline. It was being developed by the infamous Ares Group, known for its brutal efficiency and uncompromising modern aesthetics. "They want a private consultation, Ilara," Margot continued, her voice hushed. "They are commissioning an entire luxury floor, residential and retail, and they want Ilara Moreau to design all the textiles, staff uniforms, and even the interior aesthetic themes for the lobby. It's a $10 million contract." Ilara's jaw tightened. "The Ares Group? Isn't that Julian Vance's company?" Julian Vance. The name belonged to the most successful, most enigmatic real estate developer of his generation. His buildings were architectural marvels, but his reputation was cold, demanding, and legendarily ruthless in business. A younger, sharper version of Marcus Thorne, operating on a global scale. "Yes, and he specifically requested you," Margot confirmed, holding up the portfolio. "He said your uncompromising authenticity is what his project needs to escape the banality of modern luxury." Ilara stared at the portfolio. $10 million was enough to secure her business for a decade, allowing her to expand her social workshops tenfold. It was an opportunity that could elevate her brand from elite designer to a global lifestyle authority. But Julian Vance represented everything she had walked away from: unchecked ambition, towering egos, and the potential for deep moral compromise. "Set up the meeting, Margot," Ilara finally said, her eyes narrowing. "But schedule it from my studio, not his office. If he wants my authenticity, he comes to my world." "What would you do?" "Take the massive contract and risk compromising your values, or stay small, but stay true to your mission? Tell us your choice in the comments." The meeting took place 3 days later. Julian Vance arrived exactly on time, without an entourage, carrying only a sleek black portfolio. He was tall, impeccably dressed, and radiated a quiet, intense confidence that was more intimidating than Marcus's practiced swagger. His eyes, a piercing shade of hazel, took in the organized chaos of the Soho studio: the sewing machines, the bolts of sustainable fabric, the atmosphere of dedicated, messy creativity. "Impressive, Ms. Moreau," he stated, his voice a low baritone. "Most designers would have met me in a sterile showroom. This feels real." "It is real, Mr. Vance," Ilara replied, standing her ground across the large cutting table. "It's built on honest work, not illusions." Julian smiled, a rare, almost disarming gesture. "Which is precisely why I am here. The Metropolitan Tower is meant to be a monument to permanence and truth. Your aesthetic, the Renaissance theme, is exactly that. I want you to inject your story into this building, from the thread count on the staff uniforms to the colors in the main lobby rug. No budget constraints." Ilara listened carefully, resisting the lure of the massive figure he was discussing. "My work comes with principles, Mr. Vance. My suppliers are ethical. My materials are sustainable. My team works fair hours. No exceptions for a rushed timeline. Agreed, he said instantly. And no creative director tells you what to do. You answer only to me. He paused, then added, leaning slightly across the table. I know your story, Alara. Not the public scandal, but the heart of it. The betrayal by Marcus Thorne. I know what you fight for, and I am willing to pay for that integrity. Alara was taken aback by his directness. My story is not for sale, Mr. Vance. My designs are. Fine, he countered, pushing the portfolio towards her. Read the proposal. It's your creative voice, amplified to the city skyline. Think about the impact your ethos could have. The pitch was persuasive. The thought of weaving her story of resilience into the fabric of Manhattan was intoxicating. However, a nagging feeling persisted. After the meeting, while reviewing the architectural schematics, Alara noticed a discrepancy. One wing of the residential floor, designated for a high-end fashion boutique, was slated for a significantly accelerated completion timeline. She did some discreet digging through her legal contacts and discovered the truth. The retail space was being finalized as a flagship store for Alexis Cross's new, publicly funded fashion line. What do you think Alara should do? Expose Julian Vance's potential deceit right away? Or sign the contract and use her powerful position to block Alexis's retail space? Let me know your strategy. Julian Vance wasn't just commissioning her. He was potentially setting her up to work side by side with the woman who had helped betray her. It was a cruel twist of fate, or perhaps a deliberate power play by the ruthless developer. When Alara called Julian Vance to confront him, he didn't deny it. Yes, Alexis Cross is taking the retail space, he confirmed calmly. It's an excellent investment for the building's profile. You are both mature business professionals, Alara. You can handle working in the same vertical space. You knew my history, Julian. You deliberately put me in this position, Alara challenged, her voice trembling with barely controlled anger. I gave you an opportunity, Alara, he corrected. An opportunity to prove that your renaissance is real, that it's not based on avoiding your past, but on dominating it. Take the contract, and you control the entire aesthetic of the building, including the entrance Alexis uses every day. You win, Alara, or walk away, and confirm that your strength has limits. Alara hung up, breathing heavily. He was testing her, just as Marcus's father had tested Julian. But this wasn't just a business test. It was a test of her peace, her dignity, and her hard-won indifference. Could she really face the woman who had helped steal her life and beat her? Not with drama, but with sheer, unassailable, authentic success. To be continued. This story is building to an explosive climax. Julian Vance has thrown down the gauntlet, and Alexis Cross is back in Alara's life. Will Alara accept the contract and face Alexis? Is Julian Vance a true admirer or a master manipulator? Don't miss the next chapter. Subscribe to Narratives and Memories and turn on notifications to see how Alara dominates her past. Tuyệt vời, tôi cảm nhận được sự hồi hộp của bạn. Chúng ta sẽ tiếp tục chương cuối cùng này, nơi Alara đối mặt với thử thách lớn nhất, biến sự trả thù thành chiến thắng chuyên nghiệp tuyệt đối, đồng thời khám phá động cơ thực sự của Julian Vance. Final chapter. Domination by design. If you're ready for Alara to take back everything she lost, hit that like button right now and share this story. We need to know. Was Julian Vance testing Alara for business or for something else? Let us know in the comments. Alara sat at her large cutting table. The architectural blueprints for the Metropolitan Tower spread out before her. The $10 million contract lay next to them, unsigned. She felt the fierce internal battle raging within her, the logical designer who saw an unparalleled opportunity, battling the survivor who instinctively recoiled from the shadow of her past. Julian Vance's challenge echoed in her mind. Prove that your renaissance is real. that it's not based on avoiding your past, but on dominating it. Avoiding the contract meant accepting a limit to her strength. Accepting it meant facing Alexis Cross every day, using her hard-won dignity as her armor. Ilara picked up the pen. She signed the contract with a firm, decisive stroke, adding one small, legally binding clause in the margin. Final creative control over all textile patterns and aesthetic palettes within the designated common areas rests solely with Ilara Moreau Atelier, including any co-tenant common pathways. She was not going to merely exist in the same building as Alexis. She was going to control the atmosphere Alexis breathed. The collaboration with the Ares group began immediately. Ilara threw herself into the work, channeling her focus from personal defense into professional dominance. She became a force of nature, attending every site meeting, challenging every dull choice, and pushing for bold, meaningful design that told a story of resilience. Julian Vance watched, often in silence. He was demanding, meticulous, and rarely satisfied with anything less than perfection. But he was not condescending. He treated Ilara as an equal, a visionary whose talent deserved an unparalleled stage. One cold afternoon, Julian found Ilara alone in her studio, surrounded by swaths of velvet and linen. He bypassed the usual business talk. "You took the contract," he stated, leaning against a workbench. "I knew you would." "I took the contract because it was a sound business decision, Mr. Vance," Ilara corrected, without looking up. "Not because I needed to prove anything to you." "Of course not," he replied, a hint of amusement in his voice. "But you chose not to walk away, which means you chose to face the woman who helped steal your past. Why?" Ilara slowly set down her pins. She looked at him, her eyes steady. "Because I realized the only power Alexis ever had over me was the power I gave her through avoidance. My renaissance is about making beautiful things from broken pieces. My work is my armor now. I don't need drama, Mr. Vance. I need control. And in this building I have it." Julian studied her, and his intense gaze felt less like a business appraisal and more like a profound recognition. "That is the answer I hoped for, Ilara. Not for the project, but for you." He stepped closer. Marcus Thorne was a fraud because he had no foundation. He was only concerned with the performance of success. I admired your divorce because you understood the real value, authenticity. I wanted that value in my building. "And Alexis Cross?" Ilara challenged. "Was she part of your authenticity plan?" Julian's expression hardened slightly. Alexis was a purely commercial decision for the retail profile, but I will admit, I was curious to see if the woman whose dignity was stitched into a dress would let that past dictate her future. You passed the test, Ilara, with absolute grace. He reached out, his hand hovering over a piece of gold-threaded fabric. "I respect your work, Ilara, and I respect your silence on the non-business aspects of your life. But I want to be honest. I did not just commission you for the Metropolitan Tower. I commissioned you because I wanted a reason to spend time in the presence of someone who rebuilt their world on truth." Ilara felt an unfamiliar warmth spread through her. Julian Vance wasn't Marcus. He was not hiding behind performance. He was direct, challenging, and, in a strange way, incredibly appealing. But she wouldn't allow herself to be swayed. Not yet. Do you believe Julian Vance is sincere, or is this another calculated power play? Share your thoughts below. The Metropolitan Tower opened 1 year later. The gala was even more exclusive and glittering than the one Ilara had crashed 3 years prior. The elite of Manhattan gathered in the breathtaking main lobby, which was Ilara's masterpiece. The walls were lined with silk panels in deep emerald and slate gray. The lighting was subtle, highlighting the textures of the rich textiles Ilara had personally sourced. But the pièce de résistance was the custom-designed, hand-knotted Persian rug, a massive, abstract landscape of deep blues, burnt golds, and scarlets. It was beautiful, but upon closer inspection, the pattern resembled an intricate, repaired fracture, a deliberate kintsugi design woven into the heart of the building. The space was a silent, powerful monument to brokenness and recovery. Alexis Cross arrived, stunning in an avant-garde gown, ready to make her grand entrance into her flagship store. But she paused in the lobby, her practiced smile faltering. She was standing directly on Alara's kintsugi rug. She was surrounded by the colors Alara had chosen, under the light Alara had directed. The entire space, intended to be a stage for the Ares group's power, was now a tribute to Alara's pain and subsequent triumph. Alexis realized instantly, Alara hadn't avoided the past. She had dominated the very ground Alexis stood on. When a reporter tried to interview Alexis in the lobby, she quickly cut the conversation short, realizing the background of every single photo would be Alara's design, Alara's story. Alexis retreated silently to her retail space, defeated not by drama, but by professional supremacy. Julian Vance found Alara near the massive marble fountain, looking up at the towering ceiling. "You won, Alara," he said, his voice low with respect. "You didn't make a scene. You made a statement. This building is a monument to your authenticity. It will outlast us all." "I didn't do it to win, Julian," Alara replied, looking at him. "I did it because the design was true. The building needed an honest foundation." Julian didn't challenge her. He simply nodded and stepped back. He had given her the perfect stage, watched her command it, and now he was giving her the one thing she valued most: space and respect. He walked away, leaving her to bask in her moment of pure, unassailable victory. Alara stayed for a while longer, watching the beautiful, fleeting chaos of the gala. She had everything: success, financial security, and a purpose that extended far beyond herself. She had rebuilt her world on truth. She felt a gentle tap on her shoulder. It was Christophe, the former St. Regis doorman, now retired and attending the Metropolitan Tower Gala as a special guest. "Madame Moreau," he said, with his usual warm respect. "The dress is magnificent, the finest I have ever seen." Alara smiled genuinely. She was wearing a simple, elegant black gown of her own design. "Thank you, Christophe." "No," he corrected, his eyes twinkling. "I mean the building, madam. It is a dress you have made for all of Manhattan to wear. It fits perfectly." Alara nodded, her eyes welling up. The building, her creation, was now her final, greatest masterpiece. It was solid, authentic, and built entirely by her own unbreakable will. She had fought for her dignity, found her purpose, and built an empire that would inspire countless women. Her story wasn't about a scandalous divorce. It was about the profound, lasting victory of choosing your truth over a comfortable lie. This is the story of Alara Moreau, the woman who proved that the most beautiful revenge is building a life so magnificent that your past becomes irrelevant. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey from betrayal to triumph. What lesson about resilience will you take away from Alara's story? If this story inspired you to choose your truth, please leave a final comment below and subscribe to Narratives and Memories. Check out the next story we have for you right here.